Wondering how you can become better at running your business? Entrepreneurship can be stressful. There's too much to do and not enough time. If you're isolated in your daily decisions, have no fear. Success and balance are possible. Welcome to the Small Business Answer Man podcast, where you master the art of running a successful business using practical advice from experts who want to help you succeed. Now, here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Welcome. We're glad to have you again this week for another great podcast. I told you my goal in this fourth quarter, find guests that will not only help us now and set the foundation that we need to have for the rest of this year, but really propel us forward in 2025 to create success. Because as small business owners, really what you do now sets your business up for success. And I also, I talk about all the time, it's not just about your business, it's also about your life. So it's really looking at those. How can we find that balance? How can we get success in both of those areas? And today we've got that guest that can help us with that again. Dr. Andy is with us, but would you share with them what problem will you help our listeners solve today?
Fundamentally, it's an alignment issue. I work oftentimes with companies and helping them to really enhance their performance, become a high-performing culture or business, but to do it in a way that is sustainable, that progressively gets even better over time and becomes immune to burnout. We know right now that burnout rates in the workplace are roughly 50%. We know disengagement is even higher, and so it's tough. I think for people that start businesses, they are driven, they are people that are go-getters, problem solvers, but maintaining motivation and purpose and passion requires, I think, an intentional strategy. So helping them to define what we call true north, that's defining really their core values, their sense of purpose, having guiding principles, mission statement, vision, and making sure that all the decisions, once you've set that direction and you've got clarity on where it is that you're going, it defines really the decisions that you make, the people that you should do business with, the people you hire, how you promote, everything should, from setting that true north, become more powerful, more clear. It actually reduces the amount of friction and the difficult decisions that you need to make. And then from there, once you've defined true north, it's about creating resilience so that you're heading true north as often as possible. Because inevitably, any small business owner can attest to the fact that even when you're in the zone and you're doing great, it's just a matter of time until something comes, an obstacle, a rejection, failure that knocks you off course. And are you prepared in those moments to know what makes you resilient to very quickly respond into growth mode, getting back to true north? We've seen a lot of the people that we've worked with that once they've defined that, they got self-awareness to have a strong sense of what their purpose is and what brings out the very best in them. The one thing that they've often have difficulty with is when they experience a setback is they spend too much time kind of stuck, maybe engaging in some type of self-defeating behavior, and that ability to have a predetermined resilient strategy, what we call radical resilience, because it's not just, really it's not just the ability to get back up, but how do you get back up better, stronger, wiser, and know exactly what God has designed in you to be able to help you to do that. To me, that's the key. If you want to experience the maximum amount of success in all areas of life, this formula works whether we're talking about in business, whether it's in your marriage, whether it's in your community, in any area of life.
Well, Dr. Andy, this is going to be a great conversation because we're going to really dissect some of those areas you talked about and really get into that. So I tell my listeners, hang on, but I want to tell you who Dr. Andy Garrett is. He's the world's leading authority on radical resilience. He's a clinical psychologist with over 2 decades of experience working with executive clients at his Newport Beach practice. In addition to a growing and thriving in-person clinical practice, Dr. Andy is a prolific course creator, author, and keynote speaker, teaching corporate radical resilience to top companies around the country. So Dr. Andy, it is great to have you here. I love how you set that up because that's where I was going to go straight out, is really trying to dive in a little bit deeper. And let's even go back there if you don't mind, because they caught that. But really, this whole thing, as you share with us, and what you mean by this radical resilience, because for somebody
Yeah,
new, they're kind of catching on. What do we mean by this? And I'm telling you, business owners, listen up, because this is what we need to have as business owners, because it's tough being a small business owner right now in the world.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, so true. There's a spectrum of resilience. There are some people, when they get knocked down, you give them enough time, they'll eventually find their way back up. But it might take months, it might take weeks. There are some people that just seem to be incredibly resilient, and their ability to bounce back up is pretty remarkable. They do it pretty quickly. Uh, we want to help people to be able to really become resilient in the most efficient, effective way possible because they've done the work. I don't know if you've ever heard the difference between how cows and buffaloes respond to incoming storms.
I have not.
Interesting. And so apparently cows, when they sense a storm's incoming, their natural tendency is to start to try and run away from it to avoid the storm. They're not the fleetest of hoof, so the storm eventually catches up to them. And then their desire to avoid, they actually spend the maximum amount of time in the bad weather. Buffalo, on the other hand, one, they immediately start to get together as a herd, and so they can protect the weak and the vulnerable, and they know there's strength in numbers. And then they start to run right into the storm. And so in doing that, they experience maybe some more immediate discomfort, but they also get through the storm in the most efficient way possible, thereby spending the maximum amount of time in the good weather. As business owners, the idea, and people usually, when I share this story, it gets them all riled up, and I'm going to be a buffalo, and that's great. But if you don't know what makes you a buffalo, you often end up becoming a bull in a china shop, right? You're running into challenges and adversity and chaos, and you're making it worse. But when you know what makes you a buffalo, because you put in the work and you can give language to, these are the character strengths that help me to bring order to chaos. This is the techniques and the strategies. And so you've defined all that. Now you can confidently head into any conflict, adversity, know that you can handle it. You're fully equipped. And it's amazing the confidence too. And now you can quickly solve problems. And just like the buffalo, spend the max amount of time, for a business owner, it may not be in the sunshine, but it's the maximum amount of time growing, creating, succeeding, right? Winning. And that's the idea as a business owner. If you're winning more often than you're losing, then you're probably going to be really successful.
Yeah, that becomes so critical because as a business owner, you kind of set the direction. And the same challenge
Yeah.
comes into, I know a lot of business owners. I was there myself. I was putting everything in the business that my family life was falling apart. And we know business
Yes.
owners have that challenge because we are achievers. So I think I'd like to talk about, if you don't mind, you talked a little bit about true north, but really
Yeah.
defining that because as we said, this quarter, we really what we're doing is working for the business owner, the person that's listening to this. What do you need for yourself to really be a better leader for your team and your company and your family and everyone else there? So let's get into that a little bit, if you don't mind. How do we discover a little more of that true north? I know value, some of the
Awesome.
things, knowing who we are, but can we get into some of that and share that with the listeners?
Would love that. Yeah, great question. That terminology, it really came out of the work I've been doing in my private practice, and it kind of become my expertise. I was working with a lot of really high level executives, business owners at Newport Beach, and what I found I had kind of two groups. One that were just consistently hitting a wall. They knew that they had potential, but for some reason, there was some belief, something around their inner core that was stopping them from really being able to actualize their greatest potential. So we developed a program to help them to really, kind of crush limitations and be able to actualize their fullest potential. The other group, which was more of what I saw, was business owners and executives that were experiencing all kinds of external success, making a ton of money, buying second, third homes, getting the yacht. But internally, they were completely unfulfilled. They were empty. They would often say the reason that they were so driven to be successful was for their wife and kids. And yet their identity was so anchored to their job, their income, their social status, that the moment that their kids and wife started asking for more time and attention, it was seen as a threat to their identity, as the income maker. That they would often leave a lot of damage in the areas that were supposedly most important to them. So what I did is I'd go in there and help them to really re-anchor their identity to who they were authentically. So that really does come down to understanding a set of values, having 5 values that translate to every area of life. You see a lot of compartmentalization where people who are very successful at work but tend to create damage in every other area. It's like they know they have this great certainty and conviction in who they are at work. They know what they do well. They operate in their zone of competency or genius. They believe that what they do matters, but that doesn't translate. They go home and suddenly they feel really incompetent. They're insecure. They're responding out of that. Uh, I think compartmentalization, one, is just completely draining. But two, I think if you have one set of core values that's the same, whether you're in the boardroom, in the bedroom, a church, wherever you might be, it's so much easier then to be able to lead effectively. And so, having done that over 15 years in my private practice and seeing people who were, previously successful in one area, experiencing now holistic success, and recognize even in their job performance that there was a whole nother level that they could reach when they started operating from this place of a holistic authenticity. We built a course, actually working with Aaron Walker, Big A, as my business coach. He said, "How do you want to scale your significance, big man?" And so we built a course. That course launched in beta mode on March 15th of 2020. For any historians there, you might recognize that date is when,
Yeah.
basically the whole country went on lockdown. We had 25 people that were committed to go through that program. Understandably, 7 of those people backed out and said, I'm kind of spooked out by everything. But the 18 people that went through, I think 14 of those people finished the program, and all 14 of those people thrived in the midst of one of the most uncertain times in history. In many of their jobs or the companies they owned, the way that they traditionally did business was no longer available to them. But because their identity was no longer anchored to a specific way of this is who I am, they had this amazing agility and flexibility to see ways to creatively provide their work or what they did. And so many of them experienced record growth in sales and profitability during COVID. So we knew that we had something here. I was writing about it in a blog to bring this home. And one of my favorite people that's subscribers to my blog, my mom, she said, "I'm loving what you're writing," and she was sharing it with her friends that live out here in Newport Beach. But she said, "Hey, I'm not really sure what your area of expertise is." And so I was starting to explain to her about authenticity and identity and what happens when you're out of alignment. 3 minutes into it, I can see her eyes are glazed over, right? I think I'd lost interest in my own answer. So I quickly summarized and said, I help people find their true north and stay in alignment with that so they can experience holistic success. She's like, "Oh, that's great." So we started using that terminology. Here's where I think it's really interesting. It was after that that I looked up, there's a difference between true north and magnetic north. Have you ever, do you know what the difference is between those two?
I do not actually. No.
So true north is a set location, right? It remains constant, stable. Magnetic north, on the other hand, well, certainly reliable if you're out, hiking somewhere, but it's constantly shifting, depending. It's reading and reacting to the electromagnetic field of its environment. And I think that's
Hmm.
how most of the people that came to me were living, is that their sense of values, how they made decisions, who they were, was constantly reacting and responding to the environment they're in. So you would see this inconsistency, right? Who they were when they were in the office space, who they were when they were at home, who they were when they were with the boys. You'd see these different versions, and that breaks down trust. It certainly undermines resilience, creates a whole lot of issues. But when you create consistency, and when I say that you have stability that remains constant, like True North, we're not saying you have complete certainty, but you have at least a handful of things you can say with deep conviction. I know these things to be true for myself. And as long as I stay in alignment with these things, I will operate with incredible purpose, resilience, right? It brings out the very best in me. And we've seen consistently now that when you define those things for people and you define that in their business, you align those things, you're going to see record growth and you will become nearly immune to burnout.
Yeah, I love what you say there because that when you talk about identity for a lot of business owners, their identity, like you say, becomes their business, especially a
Yeah.
small
Yeah.
business owner, because where
Yep.
they're from, that becomes that identity. And it really becomes that whole self-fulfilling prophecy then, and they don't know how can they get out of that cycle. And I've seen it before with people I've coached then when they sell their business, they kind of run in a cycle that, they've
Yeah,
lost that identity. So it's really finding who they are in that true north. And I want to dig a little bit deeper, if you don't mind, into that and talking about the radically resilient side of things and that part of it. But we're going to take a short commercial break. And when we come back, we'll
awesome.
get into that. Are you a business owner striving for balance in your life? Ready to find the answers that are keeping you from reaching your goals? We created the Business Owner's Life Domain Assessment Quiz to help business owners find clarity. You can take our free assessment and unlock what is holding you back. This assessment will gauge your well being in health, relationships, business, personal goals, and finances. By responding to a few thought provoking questions, you will gain clarity on what truly matters for your success and fulfillment. Receive your free personalized life domain score, revealing your strengths and areas for improvements. With this knowledge, you will be able to make informed decisions to enhance your well being and thrive in all aspects of your life. Don't miss this opportunity to excel in your personal and professional endeavors. Take the free Business Owner's Life Domain Assessment Quiz now and unlock your path to a more fulfilling and balanced life as an entrepreneur. Just go to show notes and click the link, Business Owner's Life Assessment. It's free. And now back to the show. Well, I love what you say there, but I think the one thing we've got to really think about, we know that identity plays a part in it, it'd be a real challenge, and how some of those things, but they define that, so it helps them receive that. But I also want to talk a little bit about how we can really develop that radically resilient leadership so
Yeah,
they see it. And the nice thing, what you're talking about, you're not seeing it just in the business. Now you're seeing it in your life because we've talked about the holistic approach to this. So how can we use that to really empower our organizations? Because as
yeah,
you know, right now, Dr. Andy, there's some turbulent times, businesses, some of them are doing really well, but
yep,
some of them, I'll be quite honest, that I hear from my clients that they're struggling some too.
yeah. Resilience is one of those things that's timeless as far as the need.
Yeah.
I think there is no pathway towards great success where you're not going to experience obstacles and hardships. And if you look at the research around resilience, people who have done some type of resilience training are consistently more successful. They tend to make more money. They tend to have better relationships. They tend to be healthier psychologically and physically. And companies that have done resilience training tend to see a 400% return on investment in that. And so we know that when you have strategies that you're able to take as a leader, and your team also can apply, kind of like that buffalo. They're looking to the leader, and someone once shared with me, it was a commercial of someone that was a nervous flyer, and they talked about how when they get on the plane, that they look to the stewardesses to see, or flight attendants, whatever you might call them these days, to see, when they hit rough air, are they starting to panic? And if they are, they recognize, I probably should panic myself. But if they're calm, cool, collected, that's a signal to them that everything's going to be okay. I kind of think as business owners, it's the same thing. And really, as a parent, I see it the same way. If when things times get hard, we experience conflict and adversity. If they're seeing that I'm starting to get out of control, or I'm getting angry, or I'm not leading them effectively, then everybody underneath me also recognizes we're not in good hands, right? And so you're going to see a lot more chaos. I think when they recognize, hey, we're in the hands of a resilient leader, someone, it's kind of like a quarterback. You think of Tom Brady, who's not my favorite quarterback, but you can't deny his greatness and success. But when the game was the pressure was at its highest, he was at his coolest. And that's not something that you just have or you don't. That is something you absolutely can train. And those are strategies that we borrow from sports psychology as part of our radical resilience training. We kind of take them through 3 pillars. And fundamentally, the first part of becoming radically resilient really goes back to true north. When you are operating with a secure sense of identity, then you are much more able to handle conflict, people questioning things, adversity, because you know what direction that you're heading in, right? And in my opinion, it's people who have an insecure sense of identity that tend to cause the most damage in relationships. They can be really successful. A lot of people, again, I've worked with, their success was driven by a deep wound, a sense of insecurity that they were trying to prove something, often, for men to their dads. But when all of a sudden that goes away and you see someone who has a secure sense of self, they become exponentially better leaders because they're not as threatened. And so, they often become much more loving, accepting, tolerant, much more open to dealing people with even a diverse, kind of work group. And so we teach things like how to focus on what you can control, really specific breathing techniques. When you are stressed, there are some breathing techniques, that help if you're tired, you need to ramp up your motivation. And there's different techniques if you're anxious and you need to lower your heart rate. So learning how to kind of be attuned to your body and, match the breathing technique and the resilience strategy to whatever it is that you're feeling so you can enhance your biology of resilience. How to basically untame, or if you have a negative emotion, start to experience fear, anxiety, anger, what you can do to immediately help to bring down the emotional tone of that, so that you can then pivot into a powerful, authentic response. I think we know when people are also just feel connected to what matters most, they feel like they can overcome just about anything. So you put these things in, and then there's stress mindset, learning how to turn stress into a source of motivation and purpose. There's the great work from Dr. Kelly McGonigal from Stanford in The Upside of Stress, where she looked at people who had high stress and low stress, and they went and asked them, said, do you believe stress is harmful for you, or do you believe stress could have health benefits? And they followed this group. It was tens of thousands of people for over 2 decades. And to nobody's surprise, the high stress group was the most likely to get sick and die during this time period. However, it was specifically the group that said that they had high stress and believed stress was harmful. The group that had high stress but believed stress could be beneficial was the healthiest, least likely to die, and most successful group of them all. And so that belief, right? And it's just, these are again things that are completely learnable, that we bring in, learning how to tap into the power of intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation, while it can certainly motivate you to accomplish great things, it over time always becomes increasingly more expensive, unsustainable, and eventually corrosive. And so learning how to become motivated from within, suddenly now you've got a source of motivation that perpetually gets stronger. That's where you become immune to burnout, because you're tapping into something that's perpetually renewable. And it's so powerful. You teach your team to do that. You've now got a team that's all completely self-motivated, self-determined. And so I know I'm kind of, spewing out a whole lot of strategies, but these are some of the things that we do to create that radical resilience.
Well, I'm going to tell the business owners, the number one thing you're going to have to do when we get done, you're going to have to re-listen to this to take some, and then really you're going to have to pick up what strategy do you need to implement? Because like we've talked about, we're trying to set that foundation. So the nice thing is you've given a lot of different strategies. Now you've got to decide which one is it for you, and where are you at in your journey to be able to get there, because you're not going to change it overnight. And we're going to give you some resources, and they've got a great website. We'll give you all that information at the end, but we've got to be able to do that, because the difference is when you are in that peak performance, that area, your business responds totally different. And that was kind of really the question that I want to come back to, was really, as we get into this flow state and we start using these strategies, well, you've already said it, but our peak performance, but also our fulfillment in what we're doing goes up, and we feel, I don't know, I don't like the word satisfied. I think it's more like we feel fulfilled for what we're doing now.
Yeah. I think that's the perfect word, right? And I think it really can. There's something called, we all know about the vicious cycle, where, something happens, we respond to it poorly, then we feel worse, so we respond again. It's a terrible cycle. But there's something known as a virtuous cycle too, or a positive feedback loop, where, you respond to something with character strength in a resilient fashion, you get a hit of dopamine, it feels good, and then it makes you want to respond again. And it creates this upward growth cycle. You can learn how to, respond even to negative moments by immediately getting into a virtuous feedback loop, or a virtuous cycle. And so the more ways that you can create those in your workspace and for yourself, you're going to spend more time creating, winning, growing, succeeding. So I love that. And I think that fulfillment is such a powerful part of that cycle. That's probably the number one thing that the business owners and the executives I was working with were lacking. Here I am, and I'm succeeding, and I'm reaching all these goals, and I'm doing, I'm doing all these things, and there's this deep sense of lack of fulfillment. I just feel empty inside. And so I think it's a game changer. We looked at the cycle, disengagement, turnover, burnout, and the crazy numbers that you see in the workplace right now. I think they all fundamentally, again, start with misalignment. If you got, whether it's an employee or yourself, and you're doing things that are misaligned with your true north, I think the first sign that you're going to see is starting to feel disengaged, right? That's where you lose that enthusiasm for work. You're kind of checked out. You find yourself, where maybe before you were doing, 8 to 10 hours of work in a day. Now you might be at work for 8 hours, but you're getting like 3 to 4 hours of work actually done. You're finding all kinds of ways to procrastinate and almost becoming oppositional to the work you're supposed to do. From disengagement, it usually leads to burnout. And eventually, either it fizzles out, and if it's an employee, sometimes you have to let them go, but it's a cycle. All of that can be avoided when you start with that alignment piece. And now all of a sudden you have a high performing team, and you got them resiliently trained. So when they do inevitably experience the setbacks and get knocked off course, they know how to quickly get back on and get back on stronger. That's how you create this high performing team that becomes immune to burnout.
Yeah, and that changes the game completely, because some of those stresses, if your business is not doing well, it starts doing much better. Plus, you're feeling much better about it too. So much
Well
great
said.
information. I really appreciate you sharing that, Dr. Andy. And man, I'm really excited that I got you at this time, because as I said, this fourth quarter was really looking at the business owner. What can they do to improve themselves that ultimately improves the business? And there's really a lot of information that you've given there. Now, they do have a website. We're going to have it in show notes, but it's ag-thrive.com. That's out there. You're going to be able to go to show notes there. That's available to you. They've got a Facebook page, LinkedIn, and a YouTube channel. So we're going to have all that in show notes, because we know our busy entrepreneurs are not sitting there just waiting to write that down. So I'm not going to waste time with that part of it, but we're going to have them in show notes. Go to their website. I've looked at it. Some great information on there that he has. And like he talked about, some of it, he's a course creator. So really the thing that I'm going to challenge you is, maybe what you ought to do is go through that course. And would that be the true north? Would it be, would they find that, Dr.
Yeah.
Garrett?
Yeah. Right now we've got the True North program, which is the identity program. We, sometimes we have cohorts that are running through that, groups that go through together. Right now, I've just got several individuals. We've got a radical resilience challenge, which I'd be happy to offer. I think right now on the website, it's listed at $297, but for anybody that's listening to this, we can give you a code, so to go down to $77. And that's, you get 8 different exercises. So at the end of going through this exercise, and each one of them takes maybe 30 minutes. I understand, as you said, busy business owners, I know they don't have a lot of time to be spending hours and hours each day, writing down, doing exercises, but the return on that 30 minutes is phenomenal. And at the end of that challenge, you will have a robust, resilient strategy that reflects great self-awareness, and it will absolutely level up. You'll find that you respond to adversity and challenges in a significantly more resilient manner. What we do usually when we go start working with a company is we combine these two. So we take the True North and Radical Resilience. We haven't made the course for the online that brings the two together. So usually we have someone do the True North, and then we have them do the Radical Resilience. We are in the midst of actually creating just the True North Radical Resilience online program. We have it for businesses as we go and coach and consult them through it, but we'll have an online version of that here soon.
Super. And we'll have that in show notes. Great offer. I appreciate you doing that. And we'll get the link from you, and we'll have all that in show notes so you can easily tap that. But if you
Awesome.
need to improve yourself, you've got to start with yourself. The foundation starts with you as the business owner. I've been preaching that this quarter, and I'm not going to stop until the end of the quarter of preaching that. I believe that I'll say that some next year too, but right now it's a great time because we're in that fourth quarter. So we're setting that foundation up. Dr. Andy, before I let you go, I ask every guest the same question, but I'm sure anything that you've covered before, it can be something new, but what would be your best advice you would give the business owners that we have listening to us?
And I know there's a little bit of repetitiveness here, but it really is defining that true north. And I think it takes less time than you realize. I think sometimes people think, man, this is going to be so difficult to do. I'm very solution oriented. How do you create such a clear sense of who you are, where you're going, connected to what matters most? When you define those things, it is amazing how much more effective you will find yourself being in every single area of life. That's my favorite thing in working with these business owners. While I love seeing their businesses thrive and grow and reach new heights, what I really love too is when they come back and say, man, it's the same strategies that apply in my marriage with my kids. I've reconciled with a sibling, whatever it is. These are just fundamental principles of life on how to be successful and how to live actualizing your greatest potential.
Yeah. Well, great information. I think that's so so true when you're talking about something. When you set that foundation, you're there. And I'm going to challenge you. Check out their website, ag-thrive.com. It's all in show notes. We'll have there the link where you can get to the course, the Radical Resilience course, and put a code in. You're going to get a special discount on that. Take time, right now. Tell yourself, and if you don't think you can get it through the holidays, then tell yourself you're taking one day and get away from your office and really set yourself up for success in 2025, because that's going to make a difference for you. Dr. Andy, it's been great to have you on the podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Gary, this was a pleasure. So grateful that you invited me on and I got a chance. Love the questions. I love how you set them up often by, do you mind if we go deeper? that was awesome. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate you. And I'm going to tell you, I give an action item every time. It's going to be pretty simple. We've got to dig in ourselves. When we know our identity of who we are, that true north, we're going to be able to live into that, not only professionally, but personally. And that's what it's all about. As business owners, I always talk about, we want you to get to the end of the rainbow and there's a pot of gold there. But the thing is, the pot of gold is not just money. It's your relationships, it's your family, it's the people that's most important to you. So please go back. I'm going to tell you, listen to this podcast again, get some of those nuggets out, and then take that Radically Resilience course and take the time to really figure out yourself. Come back next week and we'll have another great guest. Thanks for joining us. Make it a great day.
That's all the time we have for this week. To continue your journey, head over to smallbusinessanswerman.biz to access the tools and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with someone who would benefit from listening. That's smallbusinessanswerman.biz. Until next time, remember, when you find the right solutions, your business grows and you get your time back.